Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Existential Side Quests. I'm Jenna,
I'm Kimber.
and today is actually a really exciting episode. It's the first of a multi-part series on the same topic. Series.
I was wondering if you were going to say that. I was like a mini series on series.
I didn't mean to. Oh my god, and my phone just goes, because it thought I said series.
Oh,
We should turn
yeah.
that off.
So, yeah, we're starting with Ceres. There's different sides of Ceres. Ceres is a dwarf planet, right, Jenna? I think
Mhm.
was it discovered before Pluto?
Was it? Because yeah, it was discovered around the time of the Industrial Revolution,
Yeah, I
which is
think
before
so.
Pluto.
I'll
Mhm.
fact check that, guys. Sorry. But yeah, so we're gonna talk a lot about like the myth of Ceres and then specifically focusing on the anger and grief side. And the reason we're really bringing this up at this time of year is because we're about to be entering spring, we're leaving winter, and there's a specific myth connected to Ceres. And we're can you put how we are spelling Ceres? I guess it's in our title, but Ceres. That is connected to why we have seasons. So we just want to clarify that Ceres and Demeter are both goddesses, and one is in Greek mythology, so that's Demeter, and then in Roman mythology we have Ceres. They both are the goddess of agriculture, and Greek and Roman civilizations were two different civilizations, so they had their own myths, and so there's some slight differences, but the planet series actually kind of incorporates and fuses both representations of her. So Ceres and Demeter kind of fuse into one. So today we're going to focus a lot on like the Demeter side. So they're both the goddess of agriculture, but in one of the Greek myths, Demeter's daughter is Persephone, and she's loves her daughter. She's like the best mom ever. And then Hades abducts Persephone because the god of the underworld, because he decides that he wants to have Persephone as his wife. Ceres is very upset, or Demeter is very upset about it, and ends up like torching the earth because she can't find her. And then until they come to a compromise, and then she can have Persephone half of the year. So that is whenever Persephone is with her mother again, it is the spring and summer. And whenever she has to go back to the underworld with Hades and be the goddess of the underworld, it is fall and winter.
Hmm.
Did I get that right?
You did. I had to spruce up. I reread the myths myself today just to make sure. And it was so interesting as a mother to read through it and be like, "Oh wow, like I see a lot of the parallels like as Demeter was kind of giving her daughter Persephone more room and more freedom, like she was, Demeter wasn't there when she was abducted kind of cuz Persephone was older, and when they were reunited after the abduction, when she came back, it was like, well, did you eat anything? Did you eat any of the undead food down there? Like in the same way that, you know, overprotective or just caring mothers can be like, well, did you take care of yourself while you were
Yep.
away at summer camp or whatever? Yeah. So
Yeah. And it's interesting. So I do want to kind of add that in the pomegranate seeds because Persephone fasted the whole time because she was kind of like matching her mother's grief while she was down there. So she didn't eat anything until like the last day she was there. So it's almost, and that's why she has to kind of spend half the year down in the underworld and then come back up. And so there is this weird connection, which we're going to get more into like the nourishment side of Ceres next week, but really around like I want to kind of talk about like the generational, like if can I feel my mother's trauma or her grief as well, and like the impact on the people around us. That's just something I want to get into. But today we're talking about Ceres representing loss and renewal, or it's like there's this attachment but then there's also this need to let go. So if spring is coming, that means Persephone is returning back home to her mother, and so mother and everyone should be happy, things are blooming, and yet winter isn't erased. Like there's still this grief that we're not able just to kind of switch to, oh, it's spring, or oh, that event in my life is gone and over, so now I can just be happy. That's not how it works. And so we're just kind of wanting to riff off of like what does that mean when you have this grief but then there's also this like joy and happiness, and yet you also know it's temporary, that it will, spring is not going to be eternal, you're going to have to say goodbye eventually.
Mm. This leads really well into the discussion around which signs and which archetypes really do embody Ceres in a more whole way, a more inclusive way. And even as we think about the fact that it's like, oh, we're happy that spring is returning, let's be joyful and grateful for spring, but it's also like, let's also honor what we just went through and maybe some of that post-traumatic memory or disorder that we're still trying to process, trying to digest those experiences. And it brings me right to the paradox side of Scorpio.
Say more.
I feel like our Ceres placement could show us a lot about how we understand paradox, how we can understand and learn to lean into paradox, understanding that black and white thinking, all or nothing thinking isn't really serving us. And our Ceres placement in our natal chart could say, Ceres placement in our natal chart could say something along the lines of, this is the path to learn how to either embody paradox, find comfort with paradox, hold space for paradox.
I like that. It's interesting too because Ceres and Pluto, Hades are the same god name. Just so I might use them interchangeably. I'm sorry, but it's like Ceres is life, harvest, agriculture, and then Hades, Pluto is like death, underworld, loss. And so like we have life. Can you have life without death? Can you have attachment without knowing you wouldn't have to let it go? And it reminds me of that essay I shared with you before by Zadie Smith and Joy, and just how in her mind, and I agree, I don't know if you agree, Jenna, but that what makes something real joy is knowing that it is temporary or that it can be taken away. It's like it is worth as much as it hurts. And so I just think like that is what makes this so valuable. And so I do like that Taurus and Scorpio, like Taurus is ruled by Venus. Also Ceres, depending on if you recognize Ceres as a planet. And then Pluto and Hades rule Scorpio. And so I love that we're thinking about like the Taurus Scorpio paradox. Like you need to have both to kind of exist and like see the relationship.
And it's interesting to think about the fact that Persephone was dividing her time between Hades, Scorpio, and Taurus, her mother, and the fact that we talk about how all aspects are about integration. So oppositions, integrating the opposition, Persephone could be an embodiment of what it is to integrate.
That's interesting you say that because I was reading this book called Ceres in Astrology. I can try and look up who is the author because I don't have my books on hand with me. It is Louise Eddington or Eddington. But basically, something that they mention is that when you have a prominent Ceres, you might have like custody battle issues or need to co-parent, and really thinking about Ceres and Hades co-parenting in a way of Persephone, but Persephone is this child that is like connected to both people. And so really talking about like the thing, I just made me think like, because there's also this when you are co-parenting and it's not ideal in that situation. If you're not getting along with that person, there is this great, I have my kids with me, but now I know that they're gonna have to go back to this person that I don't actually want to have to share with. And I feel like that's a really good way to kind of feel the tension that's in this relationship of like there's attachment and there's loss. And sometimes you can be mourning that they're going to be going away soon, even when you're in the present with that child or that thing that you're attached to.
I love that. I love thinking about it in terms of custody, because one of the things that I'm a divorced mother, so I share custody, and I have quite a few friends who are not with their children's fathers. And when we discuss it, there's a lot of that like, oh, when they come home, like we're trying to help them acclimate and adjust and do damage control. So it's almost like we're all not present in the moment. We're like in the past, which is kind of what we're talking about with Demeter. It's like, or Ceres, as Persephone comes home, it's like yes, we are happy to be reunited, but we're also honoring the processing of the fact that we just went through hardship. We just went through that separation. We just went through a time where perhaps the needs were being met in a different way. Pluto is obviously going to meet your needs in a different way than a mother would. So, adjusting to that, but then also staying present in the moment as much as possible and not only being like, well, this is going to end, this is temporary. It's sort of like when we, enjoy the summertime or enjoy the springtime because winter will eventually come. It doesn't mean worry about winter necessarily, but rather enjoy what you have right now.
I like that. And I like that you're talking about like the adjustment because again, I just think that the visual of custody, shared custody really helps because it's like an adjustment both for Persephone and for Ceres, or just even anticipating, great, she's coming back. And like spring, you can be doing the fun things, or it's sometimes like a mother is presenting as everything's fine for the child to have stability, but on the inside, the winter is still felt of
Mm,
like, I'm, having to help you readjust to this time and focusing on you. And I love this, but also I'm kind of frustrated that I have to do that. And like there's this weird mourning, but it can't take stage. And it kind of reminds me of how, when spring, the season itself comes, there's still chilly days. It's not just like, great, we have perfect weather all at once. Or thinking about internally, if you've been going through a tough season, I don't know if anyone in the chat has been depressed or been going through something serious in the most beautiful time of the year. That doesn't feel like, when on the outside it's like, great, I should be feeling good or I should be doing things, but on the inside, like I'm still dealing with this stuff. And it's like, then there's kind of that shame around, well, how can I be present? Like I want to be present, but sometimes it's like you're pushing yourself to try and be there, but you're not, and you kind of have to hold space for both.
yeah. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And again, that brings us right back to paradox. The paradox of I want to be here while I want to honor where I'm at emotionally, which might not just be related to
Right.
the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. It's interesting too when we're talking about this that I was thinking about different series placements in my friends' charts that are in custody situations. And so, for instance, mine is in the sixth house. I live very close. This is a very day to day type interaction between me and my ex husband, my co parent. But then I have a friend who her co parent lives in Argentina and she lives up here in New England, like very far away. Well, her series is conjunct Jupiter, so it's kind of interesting to think about
Oh, wow. Yeah.
there's a flavor to it that totally works with this co-parenting idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. I wouldn't write a paper on just two examples, but I thought that was
No,
interesting.
yeah, yeah. No, it was interesting. I mean, she had a lot of examples, but it's made me want to like research more and kind of see other people's experiences.
For sure, for sure. So what do you think? Could series placements show us how to honor our winter more wholly? Gonna put that on the screen.
Yeah, I'm interested what other people are thinking. So yeah, I think because I know we're going to get into nourishment later, but it's like series can also be how we mother ourselves.
Mhm.
And I do think part of taking care of ourselves is allowing, if you're taking care of a baby, you're like, sometimes you need to cry, or sometimes you need to feel something. And like, that would be honoring our winter. So I would say so. I'm a Pisces series personally. And so me having catharsis, or just like kind of, or even, I mean, if there's also, I'll get into shadow next week, but I think just really needing to feel things deeply and like have this spiritual experience, and it's in the fifth house of creativity, is that makes sense. Like it's almost like I need to let it out. I need to take this and like create something with it. And so like a lot of my writing and my poetry and my art is influenced by the winters I've gone through. And when I try to, sometimes I'll not want to write, I'll dissociate. And so, like, another Pisces side. And when I'm not writing or I'm not creating, and I'm creating this weird block, or I'm like, I don't want to do that, it's like I can't actually move out of the winter. And that's where
Mm.
we talked about it last week, of when you try to bypass, you're like, well, I just want to be healed, or I don't want to worry about winter anymore. And I'm like, spring does not erase the winter. Like in being, you need to allow yourself to hold space for those winter experiences. And I think when we try to avoid or ignore or act like they don't exist, is when our series can show more blocked and more of the smothering mother instead of the like healthy attached mother.
I had never fully considered how deeply a Pisces series could potentially fall into paths towards escapism or dissociative thinking. Because when you think about it, I love that you said winters, bringing back multiple winters, because Pisces is about that one consciousness, like everything is one. So when reflecting over the winter, of course, Pisces series would be thinking about multiple winters, like the culmination of it. But then in that, it becomes even heavier because now you're thinking about all the times that you were in winter,
Mm-hmm.
all the things that you're supposed to be grieving. And it all kind of comes down at once, which I could see why veering off into like, I'm going to escape this, like a lower archetype, like running away from it, not connecting to it would be super tempting and sometimes necessary. Like, if it does get too heavy, it's like, wait a minute, I'm thinking about 20 winters at once, and I'm actually heading it down a really difficult, sensitive, emotional path with this. Pisces being such a sensitive sign.
Do you think too, though, like honoring winter, you're honoring winter while you're in spring. And I feel like honoring winter is also honoring the cycle of seasons. And so, me feeling the weight of 20 winters, I think it's different. I mean, when especially when you're functioning at like on the higher side of things, of just these other winters feel a little different because I've been holding space for them, and I know I remember the spring that followed, or it's
Mm.
like, and I'm the more I'm honoring winters, like the first spring after my hardest winter. I know we're like using all these like, I feel like it's such a metaphor, was really hard, but it's like each spring after that is like gets a little bit easier because I'm seeing the strength of being able, like I'm able to be more present in spring, and those winter memories are taking up less space because
Mhm.
I allow myself to actually like move through them. It's like, maybe I need to, the way I honor winter is going to evolve and change, but sometimes it needs to just be flat out mourning and being in anger and being up and like, Ceres, that's why we have seasons. She was angry, no one was helping her find her daughter, and she was like, you know what, then no one's gonna eat and we're not gonna have any harvest. It's like, I'm gonna just, everything's gonna go away. She was like, no, like the goddess of agriculture and like a fertility and harvest was just like, psych, we're not doing that anymore. And that's when she got her daughter. There was like Zeus was like, well, we can't have this, and so
Mm.
now we're gonna have to figure out a compromise. But before that, it wasn't recognized, and so it's like sometimes honoring the winter requires us to be angry or to allow ourselves to actually mourn, to not always be like, it's not just like functioning at the higher expression of what we're supposed to be feeling. It's like, no, be mad. But yeah, I
Mhm.
just think, I don't know, I just think it's also, I think when you honor winter, it's easier to hold on to spring when we're in a new winter, or when those feelings, again, we talked last week about how healing is cyclical, so you can be healed, and but then a memory comes up, or you enter a new phase of life, and so you're kind of seeing it from a different angle.
Yeah. I love that with the memory comes up or like you think you're healed. Like we talk a lot about how grief in the beginning, it's like a storm. And then as time passes, the waves still come and it can still feel really heavy, but there's generally more space in between those incredibly difficult moments. It reminds me in astrology of like when we have a solar return, but not a birthday solar return, like an anniversary of a death or a loss or some sort of trauma. So like maybe for Ceres or Demeter, it would be like autumn, like the feeling like that time is here again. And sometimes, as we're grieving and as the years go by and those anniversaries come up again, granted, for Ceres, the action was taking place every year, so it's very understandable why she was still kind of really in a difficult place every autumn. But for us and people who it's a one event and then that time comes around again, I wonder if when there's so much that reminds us of that initial event or reminds us of our initial grief, whether it's astrologically speaking, oh, well, Mercury, Venus, and the sun were all returned to their spot, not just the sun on this anniversary. Or if it's like that winter when that happened, we got snow all through October. And you know what? This winter, it's been snowy all through October. So it's like when there's more symbolism coming forward, it's really like this. I don't want to frame it just as, toxic positivity, but it's like this opportunity where it's like very shoved to the front, like, checked in, like how much have you really grieved this, how much have you processed this now that there's additional triggers this year. I can't hear you.
I just muted myself, I'm sorry. uh now I just lost my train of thought. What were you just saying?
When the
Yes,
returns are harder. Yeah, go ahead.
and I do think it's interesting to look at when like moving Ceres on your chart can also line up with either feelings of gratitude or reminders of this pain or this loss or a new loss. But it kind of
Mm.
makes me think of how we talk about Saturn, like when Saturn work is happening, do you want to be exhausted or do you want to be depressed? Like there's this choice about how do you engage with Ceres in you. And Ceres shows up as different things. That's why next week we're going to be talking about nourishment, because it's not right now we're focusing on the loss, but she's not always this way. But it's like I think sometimes if we avoid that, so it's like, do you want to feel this? Do you want to grieve? Or like do you see your anger as something like, or do you fear your own anger?
Do you
Feel like,
fear your own anger? Yeah.
yeah, but it's like if you don't feel like you can do like express it, or that's not considered honoring your winter, then that's not a higher archetype. And I feel like anger can be a higher expression. I don't think it's like a bad thing, but it's like if you have this weird relationship, then it's energy, so it's going to be released somewhere else in your life, or it's like it's going to be internalized and like frustration.
mm. Yes, the energy will find a way to express itself for
Yeah,
sure, whether
like the
you're connecting. Go ahead.
mhm. Like bitter. Just I'm just thinking about like um if you it's like you have to kind of make peace with you're never going to be the same after you've gone through this experience, even if life gets good again. I think, especially when we talk about grief, especially losing a person, but there are life experiences that can also feel just as strong in that grief that are like a death to you. But it's like if you like things will grow around it and it doesn't, it just gets, if you feel it differently, you engage with it differently. But I just think that sometimes people are still mourning, who was I before this winter? Who was I before there were even seasons? Like
Hmm.
Ceres used to have her daughter year round. Like she didn't have to share her. And so it's like I could just be stuck on that. It's like, no, I'm mad that there's even the need for this. Like also her daughter was abducted in the myth. It's not like this was a fair, like Persephone wanted to marry this god. Like she was taken from her. And so it's like there's this risk of kind of falling into like this isn't fair, or this is wrong, or like this isn't what like that's the attachment piece of like this is what I was supposed to have. This is, and like kind of getting focused on I shouldn't have to lose this.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love how you were mentioning like getting lost in the, oh, before this happened and stuff like that. There's also the risk of getting lost in what would have my life been like now if this had never happened, which quickly spirals into what was supposed to be my life right now. And when we
Yes,
start
which
judging it like that, yeah,
keep going.
it can just get really messy and unproductive because at the end of the day, like that is not a timeline that's available. So spending too much time in there is that escapism.
Yes. Okay. I would love for us to spend a whole episode on mourning the life we didn't live, because I do think like that's such a thing where it's like this was the life I was supposed to have, and it's like that is where there's so much grief. But that's the thing. It's like just allowing yourself to be angry about that and mourning it, so then you can move forward. And it's like, and now it's like, okay, I need to, it's like a catharsis. I need to release this so now I can, what's a new vision? What's my life going to look like now? Like,
Mm.
I don't know. It's hard. I
Yeah.
mean, again, that's also very hard work. And that's why like Ceres is a divine feminine. And it's like divine feminine does not always mean like love, peace, and light. Like there's also darkness in that. It's like raw energy and feeling.
All right, we've been dancing around this, and I'm gonna do it. All right,
Yeah.
so it just keeps bringing up. So when my daughter was really little and my son was born, she was not even 2 years old yet, just a month before two. And it was a brief moment where my son was asleep and it was just me and my daughter. My son was a newborn. It was just me and my daughter, and we were joking around, and I was bouncing a little football off the top of my, or soccer ball, like a play one, off the top of my head, making her laugh. She's standing on a kitchen chair, not paying attention. She stepped off the chair. You know where this is going. She knocked her front tooth out, her baby tooth, and like clean out, and was screaming and crying, and it was awful. And I was like, what has happened? I'm holding her and I'm looking at her in the face. And one of my first thoughts was like, oh no, she's ruined. And then I was like, what a awful thing to say about your child, like just because her perfect smile is different. Then I was so upset at myself for thinking that it was almost like this, like grief plus guilt plus grief, and it just kept compounding on itself. And I think that was like a series pitfall in that moment where I'm like, I'm the mother, I'm supposed to take care of you. This awful thing happened, and now we need to deal with that. But I'm so stuck in judging myself for that initial reaction. So like, if for instance, if Ceres was judging herself or feeling embarrassed about the fact that she made everything barren, invented winter, like the expression hurt people, like if she starts to shame herself for kind of like hurting out loud in a way that did spill over into, other, there was no food, there was no fertility in the land, there was potentially starvation, people weren't ready for that level of barren fields, no crops. So it's
Mhm.
like forgiving yourself in the moment and for what grief looked like right after that.
That's so interesting because you have a Virgo series in two, and so like you want to take care and like be, and that guilt connection too. Just um no, I agree with that. Like it's just this, you're valid. Like it's not necessarily how you respond is valid, but
Mhm.
it's like the feeling behind it is. And sometimes it's like we just kind of focus on I shouldn't have done this or I should have reacted, and not being curious about or validating, but we know why you did. We know
Mhm.
why you're angry. We know why you felt like you had no other, like I don't know. It's just like this was your instinct.
Yeah. Or it was like, and now I'm rolling it into another area of life. So I'm adopted. Knew this was eventually going to come up. And the
Mhm.
whole idea of like the severance of mother and child, and then the fact that we can't go back, there's nothing that we can do. Even as an adult adopted person, being in reunion and choosing to search, choosing to reunite, and having that, and it's like we can't recreate what was lost or what didn't happen, and it's not productive to kind of sit in that space of, oh, what should have been, or this and that. Of course, engage it to a healthy level, but a lot of my community gets really locked in that, like, who was I supposed to be, and like, why did this happen, and finding the Hades or multiple Hades in the situation in order to be angry at them. Like, it gets to this point of like, we need to move forward, we need to, whether it's finding meaning in it, whether it's forgiveness, there's something where we don't want to just get lost in that spiral of either dissociation, escapism, victimhood.
Yes, and I think that's interesting because also with series we talk about like the attachment wound or gift. And so a lot of your attachment experience as a child will connect with like how you feel with series. And it's interesting, my mom, I'm going to talk about my mom for a second, but it's like she has series with her moon and her Pluto in her chart, and is very very nurturing. Did not always have this same nurturing relationship with her own mother in her adult life. And I was looking at, there were times in my chart where I'm looking at what Ceres doing, and Ceres was hitting my moon, I have a moon Pluto, but hitting my moon Pluto opposition different ways during times when my mother, like I was not, I was in a winter, like a dark, dark winter, and she returned to me, or she ended up having to drive multiple states to come get me from somewhere. Or it's like this, I could call and my mother showed up. But it kind of, what I'm thinking about is just, I've always thought, wow, that's so interesting. Like I'm having this like, you're coming back, you're this, the Persephone return situation, but my mother is Ceres being able to show up. But I never really thought about how her own experience with Ceres, or that like attachment, it's more, it's not always a choice. Because again, I think sometimes we need to like spend time with it, or like there's Ceres shadow work and rituals. I don't want to ever make it seem like, oh, she was able just to like flip a switch and turn into the super nurturing mother. Like
Mhm.
that's not how it works. But it's like there's this higher and lower where we can like also continue cycles, or it's like we can kind of sit and focus on, I didn't have this attachment experience, and but it's like you can kind of give it to others, but you can't give it to others until you make peace with your own experience and find ways to nurture and parent yourself. So
Mm.
like I just love thinking about Ceres and Moon together, which I know we'll get into more next week, because they are both a good way to think about, what does my inner child need? And if I didn't have that attachment or that support when I was younger, or I'm kind of feeling my parent or like caretaker's own grief and like Ceres wounds, how can I make peace or do the work if they're not going to engage?
Yeah. Yeah. I want to flip the question that we have, because
Yeah.
basically, so we were talking about where Ceres in the chart teaches us how to grieve, or is Ceres the place that teaches us how to grieve? And it's so interesting as you were sharing that story, the fusion of Moon, Pluto, and Ceres in your mom's chart. It's like grieving means or can happen through showing up as mother, showing like, because of the fusion of the moon activating that mother instinct helps to move through whatever there was in her winters
Yeah.
beforehand. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like teaching how to grieve and to cope, because I forget, like you both have Virgo series. And
Mhm.
so, but I do think there was also this urge to like this perfection or this ideal of, I'm going to do this, which does help you. It's almost like it sometimes can be overcompensating or feeling like I need to prove that I'm not going to be that way. And so like that can also be like an extra pressure. Um,
Mm.
or if sometimes it's like, I just want to fix, like my mom's she wants to like fix like our lives, like when her daughters are hurting, and it's just like she says she worries about us more now that we're adults. And I totally believe, knowing her, I'm like, she totally does, because we're not in her sight, which was literally what happened with Demeter and Persephone, of what happened. But it's like almost kind of like taking, like you kind of relive your grief when you're not able to show up in this way. And so like almost, am I trying to avoid feeling that same wound?
Hmm. Yeah. We talk a lot with Virgo too about like lower expressions of Virgo either being hypercritical of everything around them or hypercritical of themselves, when really we want to honor the fact that Virgo can see where things can be just a little bit better. But remember, all things in the right dosage. Otherwise, doses help versus poison. So a little bit better. How can I address this situation and do a little bit of work? How can I drive and help my child a little bit without being like, Kimber, you're moving home and you're never leaving again, like overdoing it, overcompensating. And it's also interesting to reflect back, and as a Virgo series, think about all the ways that my own nurture was potentially not what I needed. But it's like, if I sit there and analyze that and get mad about that too much and ruminate and become kind of a perfectionist at finding the ways that I was failed, it's not healing. It's not helping me grieve. It's not actually helping me move forward.
Yes, and I think I see with Ceres so much of the signs and like the body parts and the like this the values that each of the signs are connected to also there, because I feel like if you avoid the grief, then you're going to be coping, and you might be coping in those lower expressions where, I mean, sometimes I feel like when I'm stressed or I'm going through something, it's not that I'm meaning to restrict what I eat, but I under eat. And I feel like that does with Pisces and like that ghost. It's like the drifting of just I don't feel like I'm physically here right now. And it's hard to, it's like this weird, I have this brain fog feeling, and it stays longer when I'm not grieving. And so, Ceres being in my fifth house is a good clue of what thinking about the higher activities that would allow me to grieve instead of going into the lower Pisces dissociation.
Like connect with the emotion of
Right.
grief. Find a
Exactly.
creative way to express
Because
it.
like Pisces, like I know fasting can be a very Piscean thing when you're going for enlightenment, but it makes sense. So it's like the fasting, if or not feeling hungry when you're feeling sad, still feels Piscean, but it's like, okay, that's not going to work. So what is another way that I can kind of feel this enlightenment, or like everything's going to be okay? That
Mm.
is fifth house and Pisces, and marrying that together, or like yoga really, really helps me. Moving my, going on a walk, seeing a sunset. It's like, but just kind of thinking about merging your moon and Ceres together is really helpful. But it's like grief. I don't know. Seeing beauty will make me cry, but it's like just beautiful art, and that allows me to grieve. Like I want to see art that feels raw and painful, but also Pluto is connected to my Ceres through a trine. So you have to kind of, or no, it's a square. But yeah,
Even better.
yeah. But yeah, so interested what other people in the chat where Ceres is in your chart if you have any questions. Um, okay,
Ooh,
Camille,
yeah,
oh,
read that.
with the one just now.
The I used to have guilt.
I
I'll
used to have.
go. Go, you
Okay,
go.
you go. Okay, you go.
Mercury retrograde. Okay, I used to have guilt and grief as a kid up until recently for having a great family unit when others didn't. Subconsciously, I chose friends and partners that I could give the love and nurture they didn't have. And she said, I don't know
Yeah.
if that correlates. Yeah, that correlates.
Oh, and Camille, your series is conjunct your sun. So like so much like this desire to be mother or nurturing to people, and like in the sixth house of service and wanting to help others.
Hmm.
Do you want to continue, Jenna? I'm like getting to, I was like, I don't want to keep gushing.
It's really good. It's actually really perfect, Camille. I think you understand more astrology than you realize, because the idea of Leo wanting that the vulnerability before the right audience, it's like you instinctually knew who your right audience was to kind of suss out where you felt vulnerable and how you can, the vulnerability of like, oh, I had such great stuff, I feel guilty for having that. And it's like, well, how can I move through this by experiencing and helping others to experience love and stability and, everything that you had in your childhood. Sixth house, house of service. You just want to be careful in that you don't turn yourself almost into like, make sure that you're not giving too much of it away, essentially, because we talk about it being the house of service, and like the lower expression of that is like the slave and the master. You don't want to be a slave to someone else's situation just because you feel guilty about how good you used to have it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I'm thinking even too, like, because sixth house can also be like aunts and uncles and like that extended family. But I
Mm.
just think like a Leo series, like what it like how to witness someone and to kind of shine and like pour into them and this love deeply and loudly,
Mhm.
that which would feel really really good. But I do think you're going to be hypersensitive to like when someone has not had that experience.
Yes. And it's interesting that you're subconsciously choosing friends and partners that you could give that to, when friends and partners are more seventh house relationships. So like Kimber said with the aunties, it's like, it's almost like you want to consciously choose more sixth house relationships to process that through, whether that's like you being a mentor to someone younger or someone in a different situation that you can impart this wisdom onto and impart your experience of stability and love and nurture, as well as processing your guilt around it with someone that is maybe like in a position of authority above you, like maybe going to someone in your family that is like a mentor type figure, like an aunt or something, or grandmother, and saying to them like, hey, like I'm really grateful that this was our experience, but I also feel guilty, like how have you moved through that?
Yeah, and I could totally see, because again, guilt definitely makes sense with us it being in the sixth house. but I could see too, like we're talking about the loss or like the dark side here, or your potential winters, just thinking about how if that your Leo series is not matched, if you're like, if we're bringing in these seventh house types of relationships into the sixth house, but like sixth house is supposed to be a little like you're also the mentee, you're getting something in return, and if you're not, then how that could affect how you show up in future relationships. Like, could you, are we going to be less giving and like, or maybe more withholding?
Hmm. I love that. And the fact that your sun's there too. We talk about in evolutionary astrology, it's how you shine your light out into the world. So like this is probably a big part of what leaves you feeling grounded and purposeful in life, is making sure that you're checking this and imparting the gifts that you received onto others, and that will help you to not feel guilty for it.
Yeah, I could see volunteering would be really good. Nice.
Hmm.
Wait, I can't, I'm sorry. I'm getting into next week's episode. Sorry. Moving on to Jill. Jill said she has a first house Pisces series conjunct her Mercury.
Yeah. Wow. This is going to be a series that potentially wants to process this through understanding the meaning behind it. It's staying away from those lower expressions of Pisces where it's like dissociation or turning the mind away from it, because Mercury is about thinking, perception, communicating. But Pisces, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to be talking to another person. It could be, but it could also be like an internal dialogue about how has this shaped me as a person, finding that meaning within the first house context of your own vital energy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think too. I mean, we know Jill is like has a lot of like Saturn ruled placements as well, and so I think series can be such a gift. But it's like that Pisces, like I think you mentioned earlier, Jill, that you struggled with dissociation sometimes, or you said queen of dissociation. But yeah, it's like the higher path would really being a lot like letting yourself feel these things, and like I just think Pisces is a grief. I think you need in order to not have the dissociation, you have to move through it and like curious about why am I feeling this, or like what is, if there is an abandonment wound or there was a loss, or what is the winter that I'm avoiding or dissociating from. Because I think when you have an Aries series, it's different. Like there's still dissociation, but it's more detachment. It's more like I know that it's there, I know why. But it's like I think with Pisces it's like I would know it so much and I don't want to feel it. So I actually just don't want to recognize it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Pisces is so sensitive and so high or low expression. It lacks boundaries. It lacks the ability to create boundaries easily. And that's one of the gifts of it, because it lends itself to the level of compassion and empathy and sensitivity that's there, because it can feel it's not only seeing auras, it's feeling them, and then sometimes confusing someone else's aura, someone else's energy for their own. So making sure that those boundaries, like it's first house. We're talking about enlightened selfishness here. Like it's okay to have boundaries. It's okay to put that up and say, like, you know what, for my health, for my wellness, for my healing, I actually need to make sure that I'm making this for myself, that I'm processing this for myself.
Yes. And I do think, especially with the first house, I would be like, you need to, there's boundaries in general with Pisces are important, but it's like this weird how you may like, if depending on attachment experiences, but just like how you shown up for yourself. It's like I don't want us to shame how we work through grief, if that makes
Mhm.
sense. So there it would make sense that when it's a first house, I feel like, when you have a moon in the first house, it feels similar of just you wear your heart on your sleeve, but it's like, or maybe you don't, maybe you feel it, but other people don't see it. And so I might move differently because I am nurturing, or I am sensitive to these things. I have a question.
Yep.
In the series book I was talking about, or no, I think it was a webinar lecture that I saw her do for Kepler, but she had Louise Eddington had a quote where she said, where Ceres is in your chart, you have to, like, what do you have to lose to gain what you never had? And I want to just meditate on that question, because at first when I heard it, I love that. To like, what do you have to lose to to gain what you never had, or to like have the life you never lived. But then it's still kind of in the way that we're talking about Ceres right now. I'm like, but what if I didn't want to lose it? Or it's like that whole like being able to move forward, where we kind of talk about like, oh, I didn't want to lose that job, but it turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me. And just that whole, for to have a new life or to be reborn, something has to die. Or it's like to for me to be able to get this new thing, or to get this new gift, I have to let go. And it's like there's these, it feels very 12th house non-attachment situation. So I'm like, how do we feel about that? It's like, what do you need to lose to gain what you never had? And then it's like, but I think you have to still reorganize. Like maybe this isn't something you always wanted, but then when you get like, when you are in this space, you kind of, it all makes sense.
It's interesting to bring that to Ceres and Persephone's story, and the fact that I'm not trying to shame close mother and daughter relationships, but like, whew, that aside, maybe they did need to lose a little bit of like that like enmeshment that was going on in order for each of them, especially Persephone, to learn what it is to be autonomous. And of course that's going to look messy at first. She wasn't autonomous. She didn't even leave on her own. She was, but honestly, if we waited for her to leave on her own, would she have? Probably not. Would
Yeah.
she?
I mean, there's also this weird, there's like this, some people in different myths, it's like people will talk about, you know, Persephone, did she choose to stay there or was she tricked? But I'm like, she does become the goddess of the underworld, and like we would think at some point becomes comfortable with the situation. But it's like at some, was she never gonna leave? Like at some point she was going, whether it was going to be with Hades or not, like she was not, like, because that's also the natural cycle of parent child, right? Like,
And
so
I'm thinking of like if my daughter marries someone that I hate, and then I'm like, and then I get used to it. And then I'm like, well, now you're the goddess of the underworld. Like, I wonder if even that title is very like centering Ceres' view of the story. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not trying
yeah.
to say Hades wasn't actually, the god of the underworld, but if we look at it metaphorically as like the close mother daughter bond, the single mother who had one daughter and they were, thick as thieves. And even if the daughter wanted to leave, she loved her mother so much that maybe she wouldn't have even wanted to feel into her true desires. So then synchronicity would have it, in comes Hades to rip her away. Like something had to, upset the apple cart so that growth, evolution, all of that could happen. And if she wasn't going to do it on her own, then it's going to be done for her. She was going to be hunted by that.
Which totally lines up with synchronicity. And like, yes, I think too, it's like Persephone is like the bridge between the underworld and life. And so, and also the reason why we have these seasons now. And it's like, if we didn't have seasons and everything was just always good, then there, like now that we have these seasons, it's like, we need to put in work in the spring and summer so that we have a harvest. It's like, and then we can rest. It's just this weird, like there's more urgency, and there's also this more appreciation because there's this cycle. And so it's like, just what was, yes, life was maybe easier, or it's like it was exactly what we wanted, but where was the growth? Where was the, like, we can't have growth without change.
Mm-hmm. Maybe the highest form of what you can learn from Ceres is an appreciation for anticipation. Because it's like if we only had sunny days that were all springtime and summer, like there would be no urgency, like you said, no urgency around it's time to get to work. It's time to plant those seeds. This is the right time of year. Or later in the year, it's time to harvest. We can't let this go any longer. The frost is coming. Like we have to pull the different flowers. We have to pull the different, crops and everything. So then to think of it as like at its highest form, we're no longer in despair about, oh, winter's coming, and we're no longer anxious about summer. Instead, we're in this like joyous anticipation of spring will be here. We need to cue into the fact that there's opportunities for stillness through winter. Yes, we miss our Persephones, whatever those Persephones are in our lives. Yes, we miss them. We miss going to the beach. We miss getting a tan, whatever your Persephone is that you miss in the winter. but then learning to be grateful for what's to come and anticipate it in a very excited way. Sometimes they say the anticipation is even better than the event. So, like, what a gift we have.
Yeah, that I know, I love that. I mean, I'm thinking about like I've talked a little bit about it with like my own fertility journey and just with my series in the fifth house and house of creativity, but also house of children. But it's just my journey did not go anything like I thought it was going to go. And I wanted to be a mother for years, but there's this weird, as my friends are having babies, I have this time and energy and resources to like show up for them as a friend in a way that I wouldn't have if I had my own children right now, being able to really focus on my astrology goals and like the other creative friends and things I've been able to do. But I also just think I feel more compassionate, which is super Pisces, and just for the way I meet with clients around fertility or around parent child readings. I don't know if I would have shown up the same way if I hadn't if everything worked exactly how I had it planned. And it kind
Mm.
of makes me think a little bit about that's a winter for me that doesn't just get immediately fixed. Like that could be a lifelong permanent winter. And it feels different each time. Like it's not like this, it's not as strong, but it's like because I also allowed myself to really grieve. It's like, okay, and now I'm like, wait, I love my life. And I'm like, I still want that one day, but also I'm like, but my life is full. And I don't think it doesn't feel like I'm missing something. It's more like I'm open to what life is going to be. And I don't need to force this old image of what I thought it had to be. And I just feel a lot more at one with the energy of the universe and kind of just being able to be present with like nurturing the children without needing to be like a biological parent.
Mhm.
But yeah, it just makes me think a little bit about like that specifically when I think about this question that comes up. But it was like, but I didn't want this though. Like if I really think about it, I'm like, I love my life, but because I never imagined it being like this. And so it's not necessarily that I didn't want it, but I have gained a lot more compassion, a lot more ability just to be present in the moment and not have it all figured out.
Mm. Yeah. Which is so high expression Pisces. Like,
Again, but because I also was in the low and I went to therapy. like, uh,
in conclusion, go to therapy, you know.
I mean, yes, I think anytime you have like I'm thinking you can work with an astrologer, but I'm always like there that's what we kind of talked about, and I think we can talk a little bit next week, but just the importance of every planet has like opportunities for shadow work or rituals or exercises. So if you're feeling like your series is showing up in a weaker expression or you're like, "Ooh, I feel like I'm leaning more into the wound versus the gift." It's like what can you do to work with it, and I do think it's not about just leaning into the gift. I feel like you have to confront the wound. Like it's
Mhm.
just you have to allow yourself to acknowledge, yes, that hurts. Why does it hurt? Like what's going on, and just like really and not rushing it.
Not rushing it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you don't know,
Yeah.
your winter might be longer than mine, or it's like this a winter from when you were 5 can come back up. It's just you, and I don't know, it's like there's no rhyme or reason or logic to the winters that we hold on to or that are harder for us to just let go.
Mhm. Yeah, I like the idea of winter being almost like fractaling. Like, it's like we could talk about a winter as like that 6 month or so,
Mhm.
whatever your winter season is, or we could talk about it like the winter of my life or like the 10 years where it felt like nothing was going well. I couldn't the abundance of spring and summer into fall was never there. It was just cold, it was dark, I was alone. All of the things we associate with winter.
I have one more question because I'm looking at Jill and Camille's comments. So Jill said, "Yes, I could not be more thankful my daughter's dad decided to leave me." And then Camille said, "I truly think I needed to lose the idea of needing a partner to gain what I never had." And I feel I've heard this before with Pluto and Ceres, but thinking about what do we think about the opposite sign and house connecting to our relationship with Ceres? Because, like, Jillian was talking about like her Ceres is in the first house, and opposite would be that seventh house. And so talking about her daughter's dad. and then Camille with that 6th house and 12th house. So it's like this sacrifice and transcending, like releasing this need, literally attachment and letting go going on there. And then I'm just the way I talked about my fertility stuff with 5th house, 11th house, and 11th house being like vision and goals for the future
Mhm.
kind of connect. So what do you think about, like, does the opposite point of your series play into how we deal with grief or anger?
Definitely. It's almost like the anti-series point. I like
Yeah,
that a lot.
I
Yeah.
yeah, because I think that can definitely, I want us to remember that next week when we talk a lot about like how we nourish ourselves, but really thinking about how does the opposite point also kind of flow into our relationship with like the abandonment or like the lost part
Mm.
of series, and like the shadow for sure, because I feel like Virgo, I could see it.
For me, this is another point that we have opposite each other, which is
Yeah.
always so fun on this show.
Right.
So mine being in Virgo, like the minute I stopped being overly analytical, like the medicine, the remedy for it wasn't for me to suddenly jump to a high expression of Virgo. It was for me to incorporate Pisces in order to bring myself to a higher place with Virgo. I'm doing a lot of hand stuff off camera.
Ooh, okay, I like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's like having the experience of trying to understand the interconnectedness of everything to heal what I was grieving through my series in order to come back to series in a productive way. So for me it was like I'm wounded, I this never should have happened to me, and then it was jump over to, oh, I found community, I found compassion, I found where I'm actually very similar to other people, whether we had this experience or not. Now I can go back over to Virgo with this Piscean wisdom and actually be of service to people like myself, because I do work a lot in the adoption realm. So,
No, I like, because I feel so I can see it in the shadow and the high of like Pisces Virgo. It's I couldn't, if I wasn't allowing myself to have faith or surrender to what's going on, I can let fear and doubt kind of take over, or I can get almost fixated on it. I'm just like, well, I'm gonna do this, this, and this, or it's just kind of creating this need for consistent routines of like, okay, I need to feel things, I need to restore this faith and spirituality, and I need to have a practice with it. I need it to be something I'm doing daily. It needs to be intentional.
mhm.
Yeah, I really like that, where it's just
I
like
like it a
they can
lot.
build off of each other of just like, oh, I'll have more faith if I make it a practice, but if I don't like work on cultivating that, then I'm more likely to fall into that Virgo fear. And then,
Mhm.
then my Pisces is going to want to dissociate of just like, it's just, yeah, I love, we will have to do a whole episode on all the different like axes, because I
Yeah.
just love thinking about how they truly are not like they're opposites, but they complement each other and they have something in common.
Mhm.
But yeah, I love that.
Yeah, it's interesting when people talk about oppositions as a hard aspect. And like, yes, it is hard, but like the integration part of it, it's like you're working with the same modality. The earth element and the water element, like the water in the earth, like it mixes really well. Like you need to water to tend to your plants, and then your plants bloom. And then, it's just all very cyclical. But
Yeah.
you're right to mention that the opposite, the anti series, also can go low, because I remember first in my journey through understanding abandonment and relinquishment trauma, I started kind of spiraling, and I was in a Piscean way. I was like, everything is related to this. Everything stems from this. And that can be like the heaviness of Pisces when you start seeing how things are interconnected and you start understanding and embodying one consciousness. It can feel almost like so heavy that you want to run from it, or you feel completely victimized by it, which is low expression Pisces. So we want to make sure that when we're integrating, we're finding the higher sides where we can, so that they can start to integrate into a higher expression overall.
That makes me think a lot about when Jillian was saying about the avoiding and escapism of her Pisces. But specifically, it's interesting that Camille, and Jill all have Ceres conjunct a planet. But with the whenever a planet's conjunct Ceres, I feel like pulling that into what you can do to kind of help with grief. And I'm feeling like even journaling would be helpful because I'm thinking about like daily journaling or finding a way to release because Mercury is a part of, and so it's like whether communication, but something mercurial so that it's like if you are feeling like you're escaping, you have somewhere to kind of like just brain dump, just put all your thoughts, write it down. It doesn't need to make sense. And just, it's like over time and kind of pushing yourself to like spend those 30 minutes a day. So you don't, it doesn't need to be like nonstop, so you're
Mm,
not drowning the whole time. But I'm just really thinking about how to kind of pull in to your life based off of the planets that it's aspecting, specifically conjunctions.
yeah, those fusions, because like especially with conjunctions, like the planets don't operate independently at that point. Like they're together. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
you you got to kind of address them as a sum of their parts.
I
Oh,
do. I know we are out. Oh, wait. Do you want to say something? What did
just like
Camille?
Camille said, she writes songs and poetry, so it's perfect.
Yes, that would be perfect. I just want to add to synastry when someone's like sun is on your series or you have or like their nodes or something like that, how they might be connected to your series story, whether either they're nourishing or it's like loss or abandonment, whether they are the cause or they just kind of remind you about it. It's just I just think that's also something to kind of like pull in and to consider. What do you
Definitely.
think?
Yeah, that's a really good point. Because as you were saying that, I was like, I've never considered the fact that my firstborn child, where my series very much embodies like trauma,
Uh-huh.
relinquishment, motherhood, she has a trine from her icy moon Venus like triple conjunction at 28 Capricorn. So it's like naturally flowing harmoniously, like feeding into. And the minute she was born, the first thing I said when I like held her, I was like, well, I've never felt this before. Like I just couldn't help but say it because there was like
Mhm.
this immediate harmonious flowing bond. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, okay. We have so many other things to do, but we are out of time. So, but thank you guys for participating. Next week, we are going to get into the Ceres side, not Demeter, of Ceres. So you won't be hearing Demeter all the time, but really talking about what is actually nourishing. So we're going to be talking about nourishment versus malnourishment, not just physical, also emotional, and how we can use our Ceres placement to nourish ourselves and to nourish others.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks, you guys. See you next week.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye.